MindSnacks, the podcast. 180 ways to see your world differently. Where science, psychology, and spirit stop arguing and start agreeing. No lectures, no preaching. Just one small idea at a time and the space to make it your own. Press play and let's see it differently.
I want you to picture something with me for a second. Imagine a warm Christmas evening.
Oh, I love that setup already.
Right. The kind of night where the rush of the day has completely settled down. The house is finally quiet.
Yeah, maybe you have a fire going or something?
Exactly. And you are sitting alone at the dining room table. You have just unboxed a brand new jigsaw puzzle.
Okay, I can see it.
And you have scattered hundreds of those little cardboard pieces all across the wood.
It is a very specific, very peaceful kind of feeling. You know, like if you are like me, you have probably been staring at the exact same patch of blue cardboard for 20 minutes.
Yes, refusing to blink. It is incredibly peaceful, well, until it isn't, because inevitably you find that one misfit piece.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
You pick it up and you look at it. It has this weird splash of dark blue and a sharp, jagged edge, and you flip it around multiple times.
You try to force it into the sky section.
Right. And then you try to squeeze it into the water section. It just doesn't work. And you swear to yourself, you're like, this piece absolutely does not belong in this box.
Or you convince yourself there has been a manufacturing error.
Exactly. I am the victim of a terrible puzzle company.
It is infuriating because, you know, it violates the order of the system you're trying to build. Because human beings are basically pattern-seeking machines, neurologically speaking.
Oh, totally.
So when we hold a piece of data, or a literal puzzle piece in this case, that contradicts our established pattern, our brain registers it as a cognitive error. We feel actual distress.
And we get so stubborn about it. But here's what happens next. You leave the piece on the table. You walk away. You work on other parts of the board. And hours go by.
Right.
And then much later, you happen to glance down at that exact same piece, but you are standing on the other side of the table now.
Oh, okay.
You are looking at it from a slightly different angle. The shadows hit it differently. And suddenly, you realize it is not the sky. It is not the water. It is the shadow under a bird's wing. Wow, yeah.
And click. It zips perfectly into place. It makes complete, undeniable sense.
Which is fascinating, right? Because the physical object didn't change at all. Not a single microscopic millimeter of that cardboard morphed or altered its shape.
Not at all. Only the way you were looking at it changed.
And honestly, that puzzle, that feeling of the click after rotating the misfit piece, that is the fundamental reason the book we have been reading together even exists in the first place.
It really is. And, you know, we have spent 12 weeks with this book, unpacking these ideas with you, and we have arrived at a natural pause in this journey.
Yeah, we have.
But before we step away, we need to talk about where this book actually came from. Because Mehdi didn't write MindSnacks during a comfortable season of his life.
No, definitely not.
He wasn't sitting on a sun-drenched patio somewhere just dreaming up abstract philosophical concepts.
No, this book grew out of one of the hardest stretches of his life. It was born in a moment when, frankly, the foundation he was standing on just cracked completely.
Yeah. And when you are in a season like that, you know, when your pieces are scattered all over the table and nothing seems to fit, our natural biological instinct is to frantically search for new pieces.
Right. We think, if I just acquire more information or move to a new city, it will magically fix the picture.
Exactly. We treat our lives like an information deficit problem. We think we just do not know enough yet.
But what pulled Mehdi through wasn't acquiring new information.
Not at all.
What?
It wasn't finding a magical missing piece to replace the ones he had. It was the realization we just talked about, shifting his perspective on the pieces that were already sitting right there on the table.
He had to physically walk to the other side of his life and look at it from a new angle.
Yeah, and that is the entire premise of the text. Change does not start with simply knowing more things. Real, lasting change starts with seeing differently.
But seeing that, that 180-degree shift in theory is one thing. Actually engineering a book to force the reader to do it is another.
Very true.
That is where the format comes in. There are exactly 180 bite-sized insights in MindSnacks, capped at about 130 words each. And that number, 1 in 80, is deeply intentional.
Because it represents the 180-degree turn. a complete reversal in how we process our reality.
Right.
Sometimes the only thing required to completely unlock a new reality for yourself is to stop walking in the direction you are going, turn all the way around, and look at the exact same situation from the complete opposite side.
And as we have walked through these concepts with you, I had this quiet realization, a real oh moment for myself.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I realized that across all these pages, across everything we have discussed, we have been meeting the exact same shape over and over again without ever explicitly naming it.
Wait, I am not sure I follow. What shape?
Okay. Think of it like holding three completely different maps. Imagine you have an ancient parchment drawn by a mystic thousands of years ago. Then you have a strict black and white grid drawn by a behavioral psychologist in the 1960s. And finally, you have a glowing digital 3D rendering plotted by a modern quantum physicist.
Right. Totally different visual language.
Exactly. The symbols are different, the legends are different, the languages are entirely foreign to one another. But if you layer them on top of each other and hold them up to the light, the X, the treasure, the absolute center of the map is on the exact same latitude and longitude on all three.
Ah, I see exactly what you mean now. That is the quiet heartbeat of this entire project.
Yeah.
Hard science, like neuroscience and quantum thinking. Soft science, like psychology and behavioral economics. And spirituality.
We are so conditioned to view these as competing worldviews.
Yes, we are taught they are fighting over who holds the objective truth. But they're not competing at all. They are just three distinct languages trying to describe the exact same human truths.
Right. But if you are listening to this right now and rolling your eyes because putting quantum physics and spirituality in the same sentence usually means someone is trying to sell you a healing crystal, well, stick with us here.
Yeah, please stick with us.
We are not talking about magic. We are talking about intersecting frameworks. Take the way we talk about reality and observation. You walk into a physics lab, and they will explain the observer effect to you.
Right.
They will show you that at a subatomic level, a particle literally behaves differently simply because it is being measured.
Well, and we have to be careful there, because it is easy to wander into pseudoscience. The physicist isn't saying you can magically wish a Ferrari into existence just by looking at your driveway.
No, definitely not.
What quantum mechanics actually shows is that the observer and the observed system are entangled. You cannot separate the instrument of measurement from the thing being measured. The act of interaction fundamentally alters the state of the reality being observed.
Exactly, the interaction matters. Now you take that concept and you walk into a hospital. A doctor will explain the placebo response.
Yes.
They will show you clinical data proving that if a patient genuinely expects a sugar pill to heal them, their body responds.
And let's break down how that placebo effect actually works.
Yeah.
Because it is not just thinking happy thoughts. When a doctor gives a patient a placebo and tells them it is a powerful painkiller, the patient's expectation literally acts as a biological trigger.
It is physical.
Yes, the brain starts synthesizing its own endogenous opioids, its own internal painkillers. We know this is a physical chemical reality because if you give that same patient a drug called naloxone, which blocks opioid receptors, the placebo effect suddenly stops working.
Wow.
The expectation literally altered the physical chemistry of the body.
Which is incredible. And then, you sit down with a mystic or an ancient spiritual teacher, and they do not use the word endogenous opioids or quantum entanglement.
Right, these completely different terms.
They simply tell you that your belief shapes your reality, that you must act as if the healing is already yours.
The physicist, the doctor, and the mystic. It is the exact same X on the map.
It really is.
They are all pointing to the immense, undeniable power of human consciousness to interact with the physical world. It is just that the physicist calls it measurement, the doctor calls it neurochemistry, and the mystic calls it belief.
Here's another one that really stuck with me. You read the ancient Stoics, someone like Marcus Aurelius, and he writes about building the inner citadel.
Oh, I love that concept.
This impenetrable fortress inside your mind that remains perfectly calm no matter how much chaos or war is raging outside the walls. You control the inside, not the outside.
And if we fast forward to modern psychology, we can look at someone like Julian Rotter. In the 1950s, he introduced the concept of the locus of control.
Right.
He mapped out this psychological framework showing that people generally fall into two camps. People with an external locus of control believe life happens to them, that they are victims of luck, fate, or external forces. But people with an internal locus of control believe their outcomes are driven by their own decisions and reactions.
But doesn't that border on toxic positivity? Like the idea that you control everything that happens to you?
That is the crucial distinction Rotter makes, actually. An internal locus of control does not mean you delusionally believe you control the weather or the economy or other people's behavior.
Oh, okay.
It means you believe you have absolute agency over your response to those things. And neurologically, when you adopt an internal locus of control, your brain actually lowers its cortisol production during stressful events.
So you literally stress less.
Yeah, you stop panicking and start problem solving because your brain fundamentally believes it has agency.
So Marcus Aurelius calls it the inner citadel. Julian Rotter calls it an internal locus of control. And then you turn to spiritual philosophy and you hear the teaching that you are the architect of your own future.
Yes, exactly.
That you co-create your life through your intentions. The inner citadel, the locus of control, the architect of the future, they were all standing in different rooms describing the exact same mountain from different sides.
Which means the real subject of all these discussions we have had, the real subject of MindSnacks, was never actually about any single isolated insight.
Right.
It wasn't about memorizing one psychological trick.
No, the subject was the bridge. The bridging of these worlds is the message.
Yeah.
Mady is quietly arguing that the wisest people throughout human history, regardless of what era they lived in or what vocabulary they used, were all navigating the same terrain.
And once you recognize that bridge, you stop arguing over which map is the right one and you just start walking toward the treasure.
It is a deeply comforting thought because it means the truth isn't fragile. It is robust enough to be found no matter which door you happen to walk through.
I agree completely.
So, keeping that broader framework in mind, let's look at how Medy physically brings the text to a close. Because he strips away all the dense theory at the very end, and he distills everything we have just talked about into a few incredibly sharp, quiet sentences.
The closing sections really serve as a perfect anchor for the reader.
They do. In the last word section, he writes this, and I am going to read this verbatim. The puzzle reveals its picture, not because new pieces appeared, but because our perspective finally changed.
Wow. Let's just sit with that for a second. Not because new pieces appeared, but because our perspective finally changed.
Yeah.
It brings us completely full circle to the Christmas puzzle you described at the start.
It really does.
We spend so much of our lives exhausted, running around trying to find a new job, a new city, a new partner, thinking that a new piece will suddenly make the picture make sense.
Right.
But the pieces of a life rarely change in ways that instantly fix everything. The relief only comes when we alter the angle from which we view the pieces we already hold.
And it is so hard to accept that because it places the responsibility back on us. Like, if the problem is just that I am missing a piece, then it is the universe's fault for not giving it to me.
Exactly.
But if the pieces are all there, and I just refuse to walk to the other side of the table, well, that requires me to take ownership of my viewpoint.
It demands agency.
Yeah.
And right after that, in this section titled A Personal Note, Medy offers the practical application of this agency. He gives us the daily mechanics of how to actually live this out, rather than just philosophizing about it.
Okay, yes, let's look at that.
I am going to read this passage exactly as it is written. When something happens, I ask myself, do I have control over this? And at the end of the day, I ask, am I a better person today than I was yesterday?
2 questions. That is the entire 180-degree philosophy held in 2 plain, simple questions.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And if you break down the mechanics of those questions, they represent the 2 core themes we have seen over and over. The first question, do I have control over this? That is the question of composure. It is the Stoics' inner citadel. When the storm hits, you ask that question to anchor yourself in the present reality. It literally stops your brain from wasting metabolic energy on variables outside your walls.
It stops the spiral.
Exactly. And then the second question, am I a better person today than I was yesterday? That is the question of continuous growth. While the first question anchors you in the present storm, the second question pulls you forward into tomorrow.
And what I love is the gentleness of the metric. Notice he does not ask, am I perfect today? Or did I achieve all my 5-year goals by lunchtime?
Right.
He just asks if there was an increment of improvement.
And mathematically speaking, that incremental improvement is the most powerful force in human behavior. It is compounding interest applied to character.
It is, but it is also demanding because it requires fuel to actually live that way day after day, year after year. Which brings us to the final excerpt, the underlying conviction of the text.
Right. He writes this next part, and again, I will read this exactly. We can build and achieve anything when our inner engine is aligned, running on discipline and consistency.
The inner engine. That is such a warm, steady image, but it is also incredibly revealing about human biology.
How so?
An engine doesn't operate on wild, chaotic bursts of inspiration. Inspiration is great, it is spark, but neurologically, inspiration is a massive spike in dopamine and adrenaline.
And what goes up must come down.
Exactly. A spark doesn't turn the wheels of a heavy machine over a long distance. In fact, relying on inspiration usually leads to a crash.
You burn out because your nervous system just can't sustain that level of output.
Precisely. An engine, however, runs on a predictable rhythmic cycle. It runs on alignment. It runs on discipline, which is essentially maintaining a steady dopamine baseline through small, repeated actions.
Discipline and consistency. It is not glamorous. It will not go viral on social media,
Yeah.
but it is the only thing that actually builds a life that lasts.
And that idea of the inner engine, of slow and steady consistency, is going to be so vital for where we go from here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because as much as we have discussed and as many maps as we have layered on top of each other, we have really only mapped a few miles of the coastline.
That is the wild thing about this text. We have unpacked a few dozen of these insights together, but MindSnacks has 180 of them.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the book is still completely untouched by us. There are dozens and dozens of seeds still waiting in those pages.
Which is why this isn't an ending. It is just a breath. Season 2 is going to go further. We are going to go deeper into the territory that this first season only began to open up.
I can't wait.
We're going to explore the harder, the stranger, and the more wonderful corners of the text.
The format won't change. We are still going to be looking at these bite-sized insights, still building that bridge between science and spirit, and still moving at the same warm, unhurried pace.
Right.
What changes is the depth of the territory we are exploring.
And there is a promise we want to make for what is ahead. Because next season, we are opening the doors, and we will not be here alone.
Yes.
We do not have a guest here with us today, but there are guests coming. Voices will be joining this conversation for the very first time. We are going to bring in different perspectives, different cartographers, if you will, to help us look at these maps.
I cannot wait to see where those conversations lead us. But until then, the book holds all 180 of those insights. And if you are listening to this, there is absolutely no rule against you going ahead and finding the ones we haven't featured yet.
Please do.
Because sometimes the seed that takes root the deepest in your own life is the one that nobody else pointed at. It is the one you discover quietly, on your own, on a random Tuesday.
Before we go, here is one gentle reflection question to carry with you during the break between seasons. What have you already caught yourself doing differently?
Because that, in the end, is the only measurement that ever really mattered.
If you are seeing things differently, you will be acting differently.
It might be how you respond to a stressful email, how you view a personal setback, or just noticing when you're caught in a loop of waiting for new puzzle pieces.
And that perfectly sets up the ultimate definition of success, which is found in MindSnacks number 67, titled The Compounding Effect. The greatest realization is that success is not sudden. It is consistency revealed through our daily choices. It makes you wonder, what microscopic, seemingly insignificant choice did you make today that is already architecting your reality a year from now? We'll see if those choices become together next season. See you in season 2.
MindSnacks, the podcast. If something shifted the way you see things today, follow along. There's a new idea waiting in every episode. We'll see you in the next one.